Hello and welcome. My name is Brian Caplen. I'm editor of the Banker magazine. I'm here with Guillaume Hingel, who is the research manager of our Top 1000. It's a very exciting time at the moment at the Banker. We're in the run-up to the publication of our Top 1000 ranking of world banks in July, which is one of the most eagerly anticipated publishing moments of the year. The whole banking industry looks forward to seeing where their bankers ranked in our listing. And this year there are two things that are particularly interesting about the ranking. One is that we're celebrating our 40th anniversary of the rankings, so we'll be able to look back and compare decade by decade how banks have moved up and down the listings. And the second thing, of course, is that we're now 2 years into the financial crisis. And clearly the financial crisis has knocked the banking industry sideways, and there have been winners and losers from the crisis. And because it takes a while for the impact to feed through to bank accounts, it's taken a while, obviously, for the full effect to be felt in the listing. So I think that in this year, 2010, we're going to see dramatic changes in the ranking. So Guillaume, you've been working very hard on the listing over the last few months, and I know that you're collecting more data than ever, and you're doing it online for the first time. Tell us a little bit about the process and what it involves, and how you hope to have a result shortly.
So firstly, what we tried to do this year is to increase the scope of variables we collect. So we've nearly doubled the span of variables we collect. We've also increased the amount of mandatory variables that are needed for banks to submit for inclusion in the top 1,000. The second thing we focused on is to increase the coverage of the top 1,000. Given the growing span of emerging markets, we've tried to increase the amount of banks we include in the top 1,000. So we've worked in close collaboration with our regional experts as well as with central banks to increase the coverage of the top 1,000. And
how much data have you actually acquired now, and how much has come in online? Because we used to do it in the old days. We used to send out faxes and letters, but of course that's ancient history now.
Well, as you mentioned, we've now got an online survey. We've received close to 600 answers from 600 different banks. We've included 200 more banks that we hadn't heard from before in the ranking, and at the same time it's possible for banks to submit additional information on their banks than previously. So now we've got geographical breakdown of revenues, segmental breakdown of revenues, as well as a lot more disaggregated data on risk-weighted assets, which might be really interesting to the different readers of the bankers.
Now, we can't possibly publish all that information in one issue of the Banker, but so if people want to get hold of a lot more of that kind of information, how do they go about doing it?
It's all available on our online product, which is the Banker database, which has 65 indicators on each bank, and which has about 3,500 different live banks on our universe.
And what's the website for that? They go to the General Banker website, do they?
They go to the General Banker website or to www.thebankerdatabase.com, where they can find a lot more information about the product itself. Regarding the top 1,000, the entry for the top 1,000 is still open till the end of May, so banks that haven't submitted their data yet can still do so by requesting their individualized login and password by sending an email to the Banker research team at ft.com.
Okay, now I mentioned earlier that we're expecting to see some changes in the ranking. Over the last few years, indeed, we've seen the emerging market banks climbing up the ranking. Obviously, it's not finalised yet, but are you starting to get a feel for how this ranking may look different from the previous years?
Well, obviously, as you said, all the data is still in quality control, so we haven't got all the trends out for the moment. But we can still see from regional rankings that there are certain trends that outline. So first of all, the Asian ranking that we published not long ago shows that there's a clear rise in Tier 1 capital and in total assets in Asia of close to 20%. So capital is still cheaply available on those markets. On the other hand, in Europe, in the US and in Japan, we've seen a clear rise of NPL ratios, a rise in provisions that further grinds down the capital base. So we can see that there's a difficult future ahead for Japanese and European banks, and that emerging markets will fare out of the crisis a lot easier, given that they have very low NPLs and that they have now created capital buffers that I think Western banks can only envy.
Okay, so I think the conclusion is we're living in a very different kind of world from where we were a few years ago. The trends by which emerging markets are becoming more powerful have been accentuated by the financial crisis. And if you're a bank and you haven't sent your figures in yet, you've still got a few weeks to get them into us. But then we'll be publishing the final listing in July, so look out for that.